YouTube doesn't
until
start
Joyce
yelling.
sits here. Well,
Hey, for all you important folks, I have a hard 5 o'clock. I gotta be out, so I do have an alarm set, and if we're still in the middle of a really important thing, it'll be fun without me.
I know who the problem will be if we are.
That's fair.
Why are you
No, I'm
looking at
looking
me?
at him.
Why are you
I
looking
look
at me?
past
You
you.
did that for me.
I swear I looked past you.
You have one already. Okay.
I'll take one if there's extra. You guys want one?
Sure, we can share.
Sure.
We'll share one. Yeah.
I don't need this if somebody else needs one.
I'll take one. You're gonna have them, what is it, 5 cents, 3 cents a copy?
Great.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, they are color. All right. Well, welcome. Thanks for attending here with us today. Would you lead us in the pledge? Sure. Flag over in the corner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Okay. Let's get right into our agenda then. Item number 1, discussion, comments, questions from the yellow sheets of police, recreation, and admin. Why don't we start with police, John?
Okay,
And let's jump right into those things so that we can keep Brian on his hard deadline.
okay, and then if you have time, we also last meeting didn't talk about the salary, how we do it, so we can add that at the end of the agenda. And then go through that admin transfer sheet as well, so.
Okay.
But let's get rolling, so.
Do not
Police.
like this camera.
We can change the mode, but it still will get you.
Looking up, you know.
Fish in a bowl. No, that's Bryce's stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the.
Hollywood, look at that. That's Hollywood up there. I'm an extra.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Here we go. So it's page 10 is where police starts. So
You have them up on
Is there anybody on
the screen, the yellow sheets?
I do not have them up online, but I can get them there.
Can you get them up? That way we can share them. I think that's what we did last time.
I think so.
I do not have a copy here with me, so.
I cannot. There we go. There we go. Zoom in a little bit. I still have to share it, so. But I'll go down to sheet 10. So here's police. Let me make sure I share it so the folks online can see it. And we should be good to go.
Hey,
So, police does not have a lot of dramatic increases. There is a little bit of an increase for travel and training. That is just part of that is an increased focus, or sorry, that's I went down too far. Oh, here it is. So part of that is moving money out of subscriptions and memberships, and I can't remember exactly what it was for, but down into the travel and training. If I remember right, it just falls under this this first category that's kind of the catch-all for BCI, 40 hours for officers, but they just essentially traded that money out of subscriptions and memberships and recategorized it down to where it should be categorized. So those are almost an exact trade-off.
John, I got a question on that. I've noticed in years past on the budget, the travel, or not the subscriptions and membership. What is that? I mean, if you're taking that money now and moving it over to travel and training, what was the subscriptions and memberships for?
So my impression is that it was I could go look at the sheet last year, but I think it was that there were some things in the post certifications that were part of, they've been categorized as subscriptions and memberships and just been recategorized. So it's the same expense, just in a different category. But I can go back last year and see what the chief what it was
It-
last year.
I just noticed in years past, it seems like there's a lot of subscriptions, and I just don't know what that is.
So the one thing they deleted, it says Lexi Pole. What it says.
So that's,
That's not in there.
so deleting, so Lexipol was the group that housed our, policy manual. And we're doing that internally now. And so, but I think that because of that, and because of the changes, then there's more training. And so that's essentially the chief has rotated them in. But to kind of answer the specific question about subscriptions and memberships, those are the things that we typically pay to participate in professional organizations. So like under this, in this one, it's the Chiefs Association, National Association of Town Watch. It's those sorts of things. For me, it's be like the Utah City Managers Association. That's like $150 a year.
But there's like $8,000 there, $9,000 there, so $150 is one thing, but $9,000.
So, and then so that would be the membership side. The subscription side was the subscription to Lexipol to participate in their electronically housed procedure manual thing. And so it was a very expensive system, which is why the chief is reallocating the
Are we
money.
getting our money out of it? I mean, I've noticed you're going back 10 years, I'm like, what is all this subscriptions and stuff, but I don't know what it is. That's all my question is. Is it, clearly it's not worth it because we're dropping it and going to something else.
Yeah, our new chief doesn't like Lexipol and he wants to do a different system that he feels like he can manage better with reallocating some responsibilities in the department. But I think it includes some increased training, although not all 8250 of that would be increased training. What we have told the department heads is we really want the bottom line to be as close to zero as it can as far as changes go. So if they've got a better use for the money, then it's okay for them to pivot things around, which my understanding is it's that 19,250 is likely an increase in some training, but there's also some money in there for the policy people to go to policy trainings so that we can write our own policy or keep our policies up to date.
Didn't you also start using a new software?
So they
Separate?
didn't start, so they dropped the Lexipol and they're just doing it themselves. So it's more sophisticated than PDFs, but it's something we have full control of, like Katie does with our HR policy manual. We write it, we update it. As things change, we go in and amend it and update it. So it's not a hosted service.
Meeting that we had with Pleasant View, they talked about a new software program that was instituted here that they would piggyback on over there.
Oh, which one is that?
That's not part of this.
I don't believe it is. Do you remember which software that is, Bryce? I don't off the top of my head.
It could either be the redaction software that we have, it could be the Safely, which is our body camera software. Most likely that one, because we just moved to a cloud system. So that's the one that would be savings, but they discontinued support for you being able to have your own system. And so we switched to a cloud where we still have full support when we need it.
And then there also is that new, that certification, and they talked about that in that meeting as well, that we're becoming a certified police. UCOPA. Anyways, it's a certified police department. And if we would have combined, then that would have joined those two together and they would have fall under that, umbrella as well.
And this has been assembled as if we stand alone, we don't merge these two departments.
Yes, everything we have here is if we're just operating by ourselves. We don't have any sort of an official thing, but that may just be the outcome we'll face, is that we'll be ourselves, which is totally fine.
I apologize.
You're good, Sandy.
Hi, Sandy. We were all a little bit late. Well, not all of us. Some of us.
On the motor pool transfer, the reduction is because some years we do a lot of marked vehicles, which are more expensive. This year, right now, it's a CSO vehicle, an undercover vehicle, and 2 marked vehicles. So there's a little bit of savings in the transfer to police motor pool.
And by savings, will that just push to the next year when we have to get patrol cars or?
Yeah, so then next year it might go up $20,000. And so what ends up, we have 2 CSO vehicles and 4 undercover, and then we have 18 marked vehicles. And so it ends up being that most years we're doing 3 or 4 marked vehicles. It's just this year we didn't need them.
Right, but my point is if there's a savings of 20 grand, in theory, is that gonna stay there till next year? Or that 20 grand will be spent somewhere else this year, next year they have an increase and.
So the money just, in theory, the money would stay in the general fund and then next year be used to fund
This is general
vehicles.
fund money, it's not like a separate police fund.
Correct, yeah,
Police comes out of general fund.
yeah. Again, not a lot of changes. We did get news that our CSI contract with the county is supposed to go up by the $3,300. That's fairly standard in that it increases over time and that the cost savings, trying to bring this in-house would be pretty expensive. You need the space, the staff, and the equipment. And so this contract, basically, if there's the certain types of crimes that require their involvement, they come out and they do it for free. It's just part of the contract. Usually those are,
Pretty good at it too.
yeah, they're specialists. And if you've ever, I mean, the sheriff would give you a tour of their facility down there if you ever wanted one. They're really proud of how well it functions. The small equipment, I'm trying to remember which increase it is. I think if I remember right, it might be the body cameras that is actually the increase. It does say that there's a $6,000 grant. So that I think the increase is to get us additional, but there's an offsetting revenue. If my memory serves me correct. We're on page 11 now, Sandy.
You get grants from Homeland Security for some of the department stuff.
We do. A good example is we just got a grant for a fingerprint reader that helps with backgrounds where they're just paying 100% for it. So it's all digitized or digital. Someone scans their fingerprints, it does all the background and then, and we're essentially getting that 100% covered. We do have other grants that police get, and we'll talk about it when we go into some of the others, for the CSOs or for the victim's advocate, we get a 50% grant for her salary. And then we also get stuff from the state that is beer and DUI related, where they'll pay for extra shifts. So there'll be some overtime that's covered by their efforts. We don't get a lot of federal money for specific equipment and programs, usually, just because you have to be kind of a larger department sometimes to get some of that. So,
I've got a quick question up on the top. The LPRs, is that just the software fee? On top of page
yes,
7?
yeah. So that's the annual fee to them to host they own the cameras and all the servers, and then we have access to it. And then I know that we're still in that kind of window where the council is evaluating if we're going to keep going with it.
We're in our second year of 3. Is that correct? Yeah.
And one thing that is unique that the group might not know, but every new city contract that's multi-year actually is now required by Utah Code to have a provision in it that says if the funding gets cut, meaning if the council doesn't fund it, then we can get out of the contract. So like this contract has that provision. Yeah, that it's a yeah, basically a King's X to the council. If they don't want to fund it, then they can get out of contracts.
Basically month to month at that point.
Yeah. You know, if Chief was here, he would tell you that we've had quite a few cases solved with the use of it. There is concerns that have been brought up by residents and others about the security of the information that's collected, what it's used for, where it goes, things like that. And at this point, as far as we know, Flock, it's on the national kind of radar. There was a statute that state talked about passing that would have affected their ability to act in Utah because it's collecting information without consent. So, yeah.
Would they consider giving some kind of report or something like during council?
We did.
Well, on the
on the block, like what kind, like,
What kind of cases have been solved?
yeah, or like, we've apprehended,
They did that wrong.
oh, okay, did I miss it?
Well, but I mean, it's been at least a year, so it might be
Yeah.
good to
yeah,
evaluate. Here's
but I
some
think-
things.
And I think the third party audit is still on the books. I keep poking every once in a while, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's, but it's trust but verify, and that's simple. I mean, to me, if you have my data, it's just like any other cloud-based system that it should be audited, especially something that's used to go arrest people. That's something that I think is a big thing, and why people are worried.
And it is, and we do our level audit.
Yeah.
So but it's like Chris said, it's the third party. What do the people who own the servers do with it?
Mhm.
So,
And have they ever been moved, the cameras? I know they were said they could be moved and that some places did that.
my understanding is they have not moved them at this
Okay.
point, that they've been very happy with their locations.
Mhm.
They're in a lot of the major entrances and exits to the city.
Mhm.
And again, they really focus on that level where
Right.
the license plate is. If you've ever seen the images, they're not stellar. I don't know that you could tell if someone had a mustache or but they're good enough that they can read the license plate and get the key
Make,
characteristics. So make, model, color are big.
Stickers.
Yeah, they won't be able to say what the sticker is, but they can say the car has stickers on it. So they're not super detailed because of the data hog that would take.
Sorry.
I know this last year, I can't remember the details, but there was a case out of Utah. Pretty serious felony. I believe it was a homicide that, flock cameras in Texas picked up the subject vehicle. And we had an alert out. And so we're able to say, okay, we're looking for that vehicle, and they were able to nab the guy in Texas because he passed a flock camera down there. It hit the system. Somebody here in Utah had flagged that license plate to be on the lookout, a bolo for that plate. And when it hit the system down there, they were able to pull it up where it was, the direction it was headed, and they were able to nab the person.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with all this.
You're good.
The flock cameras, they're basically, you said the entrances of the city, there's just general cameras that overlook roads, or what?
Yeah, so they're just around the city in locations that flock and the police worked out.
Around and show them to you.
I've
But they-
I've never heard
yeah.
of this, so
They just
Some on the divide.
they just focus in on a license plate and
they're just general surveillance type idea?
They take
They-
a picture of your plate.
Okay.
Yeah.
It goes into the database. And then if, say, there's a vehicle that's been
Flag,
stolen, a red Honda with this license plate, or just a red Honda.
And we're part of a big network that.
Yeah,
Okay,
national network.
okay.
Yeah.
And we can flag and say, we're looking for a late model red Honda with this license plate, and then, it pops up in another community that it's been driven to, then we know where it is and they can send officers after it.
Yeah. Next kind of big changes are big. It's $5,800, which in police budget is not a lot, but it's just computers. It likely was just that we needed a couple more computers, plus computers are a little more expensive. I keep teasing Bryce because he promised me we could get servers for 25 grand, and they're 39 now, because they all come out of other countries, all the components. So tariffs.
Maybe they're back to 25 today because tariffs got paused.
Not likely.
Not
more-
China.
Not like, yeah.
Not China.
It says drone and software. Is that
They
another?
have one, and they've been trying to get a second one.
And this is,
This is the second one.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I thought a few,
they still have been looking for some donations. So this one, at least for the first one, we got money donated to get the first drone. But they would like to, so they've got
Block system's 5 years.
5 years.
Is it 5?
So that, in the grand scheme of things, for the $1 million operating budget, so that's not including salaries and benefits, it increased by 2%, which is less than inflation. But it doesn't mean that there's not areas that the committee could, share some ideas with the council.
Can I ask another question on that again? Are we over policed in North Ogden? And this is where I'm new to it. I don't know what kind of crimes are being committed. I mean, I don't know of it.
What
we
statistic
over-policed?
do you
Are we
want to go by?
Your-
National
your
average is
opinion.
2.5 per thousand.
What does that mean? 2.5 what?
officers.
2.5 officers per 1,000 residents. That's the national average. Some cities are higher than that. Many cities are lower than that. We're at just below 1 per 1,000.
What kind of crimes are we seeing? What kind of crimes are we comparing in similar stats? I mean,
So I can send you the presentation the chiefs did for Pleasant View, and they went through and said, here's the types of crimes we track. I mean, they track them all, but here's the type of calls. And then they really look at what they call the category 1 or the level 1 crimes, which are the aggressive,
Sure.
the major property, major physical harm sort of stuff. And those are the ones they really track.
Did they get a chance to tighten that out, that presentation to show what the level 1, 2, 3 crimes were?
Not that I've
Because it was just
seen.
a total, and they were using the total against population, I think.
Yeah, but to put it into perspective, we have less of the major crimes than Ogden does. And so,
to cross that with what Phil said, we have less police per
Yeah.
population.
1,000.
Well, which seems like that would correlate. So again, it answers my question that are we over police? Not really,
There was-
because we're staffing less, but we have less crime, so we're probably in the ballpark.
We have less crime in general, but I would, the years I was on council, with the exception of maybe murder, which we've had, in the 10 years I was on council, there were 2 or 3 that I'm aware of, in our little community. But we have everything else
Sure.
on a pretty regular basis. Elder abuse, child abuse, spousal abuse, rapes and assaults. We have that on a fairly regular basis.
I had a pretty hefty discussion with one council member and he said they were one of the highest drug use call groups. And I was like, what?
There was the chief Einan did a good metric dump. I don't remember when, I think, but it was soon after he got online. I want to say it was after the budget, but it was close because that's when he came up with hey, we need 2 more CSOs. That was the first initial thing. I can't remember if that was close.
CSO.
Was that?
community service officer.
Sorry, yeah.
That's actually probably the next department we're gonna talk
Oh,
about.
sorry. Good lead. But it had the metrics though that you're talking about
Let's-
more detailed than.
And we can
just
get you
what
the
they-
chief and,
Yeah,
and
I'm just curious.
get that information for you, yeah.
Well,
I know years ago when we started
You love
publishing
metrics.
weekly, the kind of the blotter for each week, people were pretty astounded
well, that would be me probably. That's
at,
why- that's
at
what I mean.
what was already going on in the city that you just have no idea because the police took care of it.
Well, I will say that I did call the police because we had a skinwalker out behind our house and you can ask the officers. It's an awesome
A
story
what?
now. Skinwalker. Officer said that. Don't look it up, he told my wife.
I grew up
You
in
guys heard that
Arizona, I
story?
know what skinwalkers are.
You guys heard that? It's pretty funny. It's up in the foothill. Anyway.
Yeah.
I was just curious again to, and I think you've answered my question about being over police. And I think that's fair, so.
So
Okay.
after all this
Mike, any-
training, you're gonna have to repeat this next year on the committee, right? Or pay them back for all this training.
He's not getting it. It's sarcasm.
Don't worry about it, she's being sarcastic. Mike, anything
So.
on police?
I did, on police, I did have one thing on the recovery side of things.
Okay,
So for the judicial side, where we're prosecuting people and serving them and those type of things, have we elevated those charges where our costs have elevated so much in the last 3 or 4 years? Because it looked like it was flat or declining.
There's 2 things going on. One is what the state sets, the minimum or maximum you can charge for each crime. And anything that goes over the standard is then the judge is the one who kind of rates it. And we try to be very autonomous and let the judge be very autonomous so that it doesn't look like the city's trying to use that as a driving force. The reality is we get to keep 15% of all the fines that the police collect or the courts collect through tickets and things. The rest of it goes to the state. And so you have 2 things going on, which is it's not necessarily that people are not doing as many bad things, but our officers might not write as many tickets one year. And so it might go down, or the judge might dismiss more cases based on, so there's a lot of moving pieces and it's kind of hard to dial it in. Essentially, the fines just about cover the cost of the judicial court. That there's almost no money left over to go to police. And then the other 85% goes and helps pay for the district court and all those sorts of things, at the state Supreme Court, things like that.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay, anything else, Mike? No. Sandy, any questions?
Okay.
Jumping down to community service, which is on 17, so it's the last or second to last department. There is not a lot of changes here, with the exception of the Weaver County shop animal shelter, where the community service officers take animals. They're having a 39% increase is what's proposed. And that's because of increased costs down there, salaries, operational and maintenance on that facility. We have done our best to not send animals down there, and it is helped. Ogden, for example, I think their cost to the shelter, can't remember if it's 400,000 or 800,000, but it's a lot of money that they send to the shelter every year. So
if you look online to see how many things they have out there, it is ridiculous.
yeah.
Is this kind of family?
Yeah, exactly. And it is the CSOs do evidence, animal control, and code enforcement.
And crossing.
And they are looped in with, they oftentimes will step in to help with crossing guards, but they're part of that investigative team that handles all the crossing guards with the school resource officer, that's a regular licensed officer that spends the school year at North Ogden Junior High. And Weaver County pays us, the school district pays us for that.
There was a
So-
lot of discussion around code enforcement last night. Is that gonna stay flat?
So the request last night was to add an officer, another community service officer. The cost for his salary is about 80,000, and then the vehicle on, if we had to add a vehicle, it's another 25 to 40, depending on the vehicle. We've been getting them, they don't need a large, but they do need some lights and they need some stuff so that they can make sure that they look official. Yeah. And I don't know what the council's gonna do with that. That might be a good thing for the group to give a suggestion to the council on.
So is that
or we can go back.
80,000 salary and benefits, or is that
Salary and
salary and
benefits,
benefits? Okay.
Full-time position.
And a vehicle.
And the vehicle,
And they're enforcing codes from top to bottom.
and managing animals and evidence. So, a good example is the evidence at, Pleasant View. I hate to pick on them, but it's one of the, front office folks does all their evidence. So it's not that that's totally fine for a small department. We just run a slightly different system where our officers, once they put it in the evidence lockers, never touch it or see it again. It goes into the court system if it ever comes out again. So. Yeah. And then they also do background checks, fingerprinting and stuff as needed. Other duties as assigned. Yeah, the catch-all that's in all of our job descriptions. Where do you want to jump to next?
Any questions about CSOs? I know that there is a planned discussion with council on the adding of an officer, and so that'll be in their hands, whether they decide to do that.
But I think proactive versus reactive is literally.
Are we
Yeah.
having a lot of issues with codes or something? Violations, or is this just too many?
If we were to drive around, yeah, they're everywhere.
Well, I'm sure there are, but again, is the council getting lots of calls about it, complaints, or, I mean, how many?
All of our code enforcement calls go through Weaver Dispatch, and so it sets a case number, and then they prioritize those based on what is and isn't, the most important thing that's going on, essentially. So some of it might be neighbor arguments about sheds, and other things are major issues like retaining walls that look like they're gonna fail due to overwatering. We have a number of things that are addressed, but they essentially enforce all of our regular codes, so that's weeds and nuisances, and then all of the land use codes, so that's sheds and buildings and accessory buildings and things that get constructed without a building permit. So it's a wide variety of stuff I've seen. And then the other thing with the code enforcement officers is that it's sort of a breeding ground for them moving into a police officer if they decide to go into the academy. So it can be kind of a foot in the door for some folks. Others are happy to do animal control and evidence, and stick around as code enforcement officers, but we've seen
Sounds
some
like an
variety
awful
in
job.
that as we move on.
If you've read through the code, you'd understand why. It is ginormous.
Well,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I have read through the code and I think there's a different solution to some of that stuff too, but
And that's the other part. The other part is to recommend doing away.
I mean, just to give you an idea, my house was unlivable when it was brand new because of deck joist stain. I said, why is that in the code? Unlivable. Wouldn't give me a certificate to occupy.
So that is a philosophical, high-level discussion that
Yeah.
council's already working on.
Yeah.
As far as code enforcement, it was introduced last night at council meeting. That, what is the policy that council's going to have? How are we going to be proactive, reactive? Because right now we're reactive on code enforcement. Nothing gets done unless a complaint is lodged or it's super egregious and somebody happens to see it. So the question is, which direction do we go?
What are the majority of these calls coming in that's bringing up this discussion? Or are they all over the place?
Animal is a big, barking dogs is a big one.
But
And then
chicken coops came up, what, 3
Chickens
times
came
last night?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just, it's understanding the code and why do we have certain things in there, number one, and number two, if we're not enforcing most of the code, why do we have it? I mean, Scott came up with the idea, well, if it's egregious, then we need to be enforcing it, but if it's not, fire life safety, do you force it, do you not enforce it? So the whole point is, you can either just status quo, nothing's wrong, just keep going, or do something about it.
I get it.
So, yeah.
That's like an awful job, though. Way to deter policemen. Go be a CFO and enforce code and have
Well,
everybody hate you.
And our officers used to do all animal calls and a lot of the neighbor disputes and so this is actually creating a group that takes some of the pressure off officers so they can do the stuff they're trained to do. And, in fact, the chief's thought process is by adding a CSO as opposed to an officer, what it does is it just frees up the time that some of those officers are still helping to go out and do policing and at a cheaper cost instead of adding an officer.
Yeah, the plan that they presented on last night in the agenda, if you go look at that it kind of brings the ideas of what they're thinking about. So just for fun.
Just don't put it don't put it in the planning department. We don't want to do it. It's in the police department is where it should be, because a uniformed officer and CSO showing up to your property is a lot more enforcing of the code than some guy who's wearing a North Ogden City hoodie and taking pictures of your property.
Move code enforcement to planning. Got it. Okay.
But the only reason I came is to keep it out of the plan.
John, let's jump to admin, start with council.
Council?
Yeah.
Okay. That's page 1. For those who are keeping track. Most of it is fairly minor. There is additional money for youth city council. An $1,800 that was talked about by the council. The idea for this is that there would be some offset with the youth city council and their participation in city events to help either save the city money or generate their own revenue to offset it. A good example is the leader there has asked about them selling drinks at Cherry Days out of the Pepsi trailer and using the proceeds from that, which would come into the city revenues and then help offset the costs. So those are the type of things. And with that, they've had an uptick in participation. And so they're working on a way to not blow the budget by, Mayor had a good suggestion of saying, look, if you want to go to the conference, you can go yourself and your own dime, or you tick these boxes to kind of get the sponsorship from the city to go and attend. And so that's the increase there, is that they've actually just seen quite a few more people attending. It's been quite good.
There's interest in the youth council fund.
Yeah, so there's a couple of years ago, that we had 6, 7, and I think right now we're at 24.
A large group this year.
So it's a good group, and they really do a lot. Like when it comes to Cherry Days, they'll help clean up, they'll help with some of the kids' games, they're gonna help with parade floats, and it's good. They're a fairly good group. I thought, oh, it's not showing it as an increase. But this is technically increased. The election is $55,000. That's every other year. That's assuming that we're doing a primary election, and it's that much because we have to mail out the ballots, and the ballots are expensive. The majority of the administrative costs at the county is really not much. 2 years ago, and this is obviously not something we encourage, but we had someone come in and sign up at kind of the last hour that pushed us into the 7 candidates for council as opposed to 6, and which made us have to do a primary for 28 grand or something like that.
Almost 30.
So,
I blame Merrill. I don't know who. I blame-
but it's
I love it.
it's something that we do every couple of years. If there's not a primary, then the cost drops quite a bit because usually the regular general election, there's more than just us on the ballot. Usually there's some sort of bond, something at the county, something at the library that is on the ballot, and then we split the cost to mail the ballot. So the primary can be quite expensive, and then the general election is usually maybe right around 20, maybe a little less than that, assuming we're splitting it with somebody. The hard thing is we don't typically do it on national election years. We're not doing elections, and so we don't share with the state those costs. Sorry, I was going to take your role.
No,
Asking
okay.
for a question.
No, you're welcome to do it. Any questions, Mike? Nope. Brian? Sandy? Okay.
Judicial, at this point, no changes. They don't have a large operational budget that's outside of this category, which is the cost for judge and attorney services. We have a contract with the prosecutor. 7,000 is about what we pay for public defense. There's been some rules recently that require us to offer public defenders for a certain level of crime, and so we pay that. And then there's some witness fees, but so much of it is just kind of fixed standard, and it doesn't change much. But you can see in the past, that we have seen. I mean, it's up a little bit, not from last year, but from the year before. It's up $8,000. The bailiff cost is a big deal. If we have more court, longer court, it's typically time and a half for the officers that are doing it. We've explored the idea of outsourcing that to a third party. As of now, we're still using in-house officers because it's actually also provides some training for the officers. If they're in the room and they see the judge approve or deny charges, then they get to see the reasons why, and it'll help them in there as they, issue citations in the future. So
Is some of this offset?
so this is part of that. So this 60,000 is what the fines that are paid help cover. But then there's another roughly 140,000 in salary and other stuff for the judge and the clerks that's offset. So we get about 200,000 in court fines and fees that we don't give to the state. And then so that 200,000 about covers it. It has not always been in the black. Some years it's in the red. But it seems to be hovering right around that 200,000 plus or minus 10%. Well, maybe 5%.
And like what Phil presented last night, showing the recoveries on some of this stuff, I think is going to help a lot of people understand it.
Yeah, and if you noticed when we did the council work session in this room a couple of weeks ago, I tried to, whenever I was showing the expense, I added a little note that said, hey, this is the revenue, or this is where this revenue goes, because we talked about the money coming in. So it was a little opposite of, expenses showing where the revenue comes from. And that we'll work on that as we try to prepare
The body cameras with police that we just went through where you had the little parenthetical, $6,000 grant is helpful, that there's 43,000 being spent, but 6,000 of that, which is basically the increase, was covered by a grant, and that's helpful to know.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on judicial? Nope. Sandy? Okay. John, let's move on to recorder.
Okay. Again, this building, in theory, their budgets are fairly small compared to police, compared to public works, just because of the size of stuff. The biggest increases for recorder are in the computer services. this is where we house the software costs. Unicode is the group that does our online code. And that when you go onto the website and you look at our ordinances, codes and things like that, they're the ones that house it. Monday.com is a new software we're trying, which allows for basically the department heads to share information back and forth and track things a little better. We're trialing it right now to see if we like it enough that we would expand it out and potentially include the council. So the council could, if they have a question about, hey, what's happening up at the water works experience? Is that what we're calling it? Anyways, the new area over by the public works, the old public works site, that they could just jump on and see, hey, this is where we're at. We're waiting. So it kind of has some Gantt charts and some flow, kind of lets you know where you're at on projects. Adobe, they need it because they redact a lot of stuff for grammar requests and amend a lot of documents. And then the CDI, the Laserfish, that's our document storage software. So that's our historical archive of city documents. That one has increased in a large part, them increases to Municode, but that 1400 for Monday.com is entirely new this year. And that's really the biggest, that category is the biggest change for us, or for the recorder's office. And again, this doesn't include salaries. And if we get time at the end, we'll talk about a little bit about how we do salaries, because that is a big thing to discuss this year.
Okay. Questions? Okay, moving right along then.
The next one isn't labeled, but I believe it is our finance department.
At 10:45.
Yeah. It is held the same. No dramatic changes. This is a budget that was approved or set up by Jamie before she left to take her new job. But the ones that we typically might see the most movement in every 3 to 5 years is our professional services when we go out to RFP for new auditor and new outside accounting services. We have the outside accounting service. They're the group that helps us do our CAFRs, our final year-end financial documents. And then the auditing group is the group that comes in and verifies those to make sure that they are on par with the state code and the state auditor's requirements. This is also where a lot of utility credit card fees end up being housed. A good chunk of this 32,000, there is an offsetting revenue in that if it's paid online, then you pay a convenience fee. We still charge it, but then the revenue would be offset here. There is a rule apparently with credit cards that if you pay with a credit card at the counter, we cannot charge a convenience fee. So that's part of the contract we have with the group we use. I think it's industry standard, but maybe not. And then, but with that, we think we pay 1.5%, where the standard is typically higher for the non-government rates typically higher.
The loophole around that percentage you can't charge is you say prices reflect a cash discount.
Yeah.
They pay more, so you have the convenience fee of the credit card, but.
And we have found that we don't have as many people who come in to the counter as we used to. We have a lot of people who do the automatic bill pay. Some of you, though, last year might have found that America First system kind of imploded and bills didn't get paid for a couple of months. But yeah, it didn't affect everyone, but there was quite a few people in the city it did impact.
Just to let you know, this thing that you sent the other day
has a lot of zeros.
Well, no, it's different for finance. The finance has a couple of increases versus the loan sheet.
Okay.
There's just a couple of increases on the software and.
Well, and by the time when we get this ready for council for next meeting, this will be included, and we'll send it to the group as well. What's the actual budget worksheet? So what it does is it takes these categories like this one at the top, the 1045 230, and it just boils it down to this number. But then it gives you a history for the past 4 years, the actual for the past 2 years, what was budget for the year that we're currently sitting in, and then the budget proposed for next year. So you can see a little bit of history and stuff. And we'll send that out to the group as we get it ready for council in 2 weeks. Okay.
With all the automated payments on this kind of stuff, would that decrease labor anywhere, I would think? Probably years ago, but
It has. So we used to have 4 utility billing clerks. And now we're really down. We just keep hacking away at Bryce's staff, but we used to have, he probably had a staff, including himself, of close to 8 with some part-timers and full-timers. And now we're at 5.
4 full-time and 2 part-time.
Yeah. So we've seen some reductions as we've automated more.
I'm thinking, you know, paying a convenience fee online, I would think the majority of people are doing that. And with the reduction in labor and the increase in revenue, I guess the increased revenue offsets the credit card fees, but I would think the increase in revenue from the convenience online is more than the fee of the credit cards here, because I doubt a lot of people coming in and paying with credit cards. But again, it should be a net positive in that aspect.
Yeah. And
There's zero for it. If you do banking, right out of your bank account, it doesn't, there's no.
Right, that's my point, and that's how,
Yeah.
you know, the ACH is across, but my point is, the revenue should still be more, I mean, we should be able to reduce labor, therefore, a net positive.
yeah, and in fact, and the hard thing about that point that you're making is it's spot on that has been the natural thing that we've done with, especially with Bryce's help in making that happen. And what that means is that utility rates haven't gone up as much, because most of that, and so it may seem small because it might only be 50 cents this year, but over 5 or 6 years it adds up. But your point's exactly spot on, that it's much more expensive to have someone sitting here than it is to even pay for a system to, I mean, even the 32,000, I mean, that would be a part-time person, you know, just about, with all the benefits and everything included. So, there's been a lot of efficiencies there. I know Dave probably didn't talk about it last week, but the automated water meter readings has saved mucho people.
Lots.
Yeah. I mean, we probably have 3 or 4 meter readers at this point with how many meters would be read monthly, and it's all radio based. You don't even have to leave the office. So
Is there a way to maybe, so you're paying, what did you say, 1.5%?
Mhm.
So is there a way to entice the customer to use the ACH and pay them 75 cents or something? Or,
we-
0.75%?
You just quit taking credit cards, can you? Or do you have to take credit cards?
If we quit taking credit cards, we would have a lot of people who couldn't make ends meet, meaning that we would start losing so much in collections, because we'd probably end up being a net negative.
Because I think with either Rocky Mountain or Enbridge, one of them, they do a discount if you do an ACH draw versus a credit card.
And
But you're still, I mean, if you give them half, you're still half ahead.
no, that's something we could look into. And Bryce has already written it down.
How many people are still paying with credit cards?
Majority.
Majority?
Because they set it up automatically and they just don't go in and change it because it just comes out.
Okay, their airline points.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
want their points, so.
Well, and then there's the older people that don't want you getting money out of their.
Right, but I'm
Yeah.
asking percentage wise.
Oh,
I know there's gonna be a small percentage that still wanna
Don't
pay a
think
check or bring cash in, but.
Yeah, and there's quite a group that still come in with cash and check. The amount
I
of
can't
people.
hear what you're saying,
Oh,
sorry.
You pointed out when I,
No.
when I said old people. you
No,
went-
I'm there with you. We'll have that discussion later.
The amount of people who come to the counter and pay with a credit card is substantially less than it used to be, because the ones who still come here are cash and check, because they don't want electronic information out there.
But our
And is it a substantial number though?
What was that?
Is it a substantial number?
Pay with credit card at the counter.
Are you talking 5%, 10% of the customers?
That come in, it's probably of the people who come in, it's probably about half. It's probably split. There's not that many that are coming in at all to pay.
Right,
Actually, that's not true. It's
that's what
probably
I'm
less
asking.
than
What
half.
percentage of the customers, so the North Ogden base, there's 20,000 homes or whatever, are we talking, 200, we talking 50, we talking 10,000, half, and what percentage of the customers are coming in and paying in-house here?
That are coming, it's a really low percentage that are coming in.
So we
A lot
have-
of them are calling and paying over the phone.
Okay.
That's the big one that if I could get rid of, it would be great.
And
But
we're trying like all of the building and land use fees. So every land use application that comes through, whether it's a $40 land use permit for a fence, shed, or additional concrete, or a major application for a subdivision site plan, those can be thousands of dollars. Typically, those engineers, they don't care. They'll call, they'll put it on a credit card, they'll eat the 3% fee. In some cases, we give them the option of an ACH transfer, but to get a, first level engineer at large engineering firm to have the ACH number and account number is very low likelihood. And
So just credit
so
card.
we collect credit card fees, and if we're paying 3% on $6,000 applications regularly, that's a problem. Our building permits that range from $14,000 to $25,000 are probably mostly paid by check or ACH payments because they're coming out of a financing method. And we're trying right now to make sure that our iWork software, which is our input for all building permits, business license, so building permits and land use permits, to have an automatic credit card option. So you've submitted for a subdivision, we can apply the fees and then send them a link that allows them to pay immediately. And then they can do it via ACH or credit card. So lots and lots of call-ins. I don't take credit cards, but I do know that I send lots of emails to people that say, give our front desk a call and they'll process this and send you a receipt. And that's everything in land use. And that's in addition to, the number of times I hear people come in for a green waste pass. What else is paid for?
Which needs to be
Poll
electronic.
Passes, like all those things, we want to have an electronic option on our website,
And over the last 12 years that I've been involved, the how people are paying has changed as demographics change and as age, the average age changes and people's comfort level and experience with electronic payments and such, as all that changes, we're seeing a slow morphing into the, maybe another 10 years and we'll be where everybody's automatic and some of these fees will go away and just slow.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions then? Sandy?
So can we do the green waste?
The answer is yes. The question is how much it's gonna cost to do it, Yeah.
Okay, administrative services?
Okay, Bryce is here. This is Bryce's budget. So,
It's
Bryce,
up
do you wanna talk about the
24.3%. Bryce, what's up with that?
so the biggest thing is the business license software.
It's a.
We're looking about $8,000. So like Scott just mentioned, business licensing is one of the ones we are not even a little bit digital yet. If you have a business license, you are getting mailed your thing, you are signing it, you are mailing it back in or bringing it in person to pay for it. We are trying to move that to all digital. You can sign online through an app or through web-based. You get just a digital copy that you can print yourself. The paper that we print our business licenses on is very expensive. It's like, I think it's $500 a ream. So,
How much?
I think it's $500 for
Cause it's that fancy
the
watermarked
fancy
embossed.
paper, yeah. So we are trying
And it
to
has.
get away from that.
It doesn't have to be. It's just, that's the way it's always been
And that's the way
done.
it's always been.
On that topic, business licenses, I asked Phil, have we had a discussion of what is the purpose of it? Can we get away from it? What's your opinions on that?
So I don't think we can get away from it. One, it leads into the whole code enforcement thing. Business licensing is a way to make sure people know the rules, that the city's aware of who's doing kind of what businesses, that the businesses are following the rules by the state. I don't think we could get away from it.
So I'm gonna challenge you on that.
Okay.
What are you doing to teach the businesses about what the rules are at the state? Because every business license I've ever got, it's go to the city, pay $200 to $300. Here's a paper, have a nice life. And I say, what's this $264 for? And then I get yelled at. And I said, this is a fair question. What am I giving you
didn't yell.
$264 for? Now, I've never had a license in North Ogden that I know of, but again, and I said to Phil, if we do away from that or drastically reduce the business license, my opinion is, I'm a small business guy, it looks more inviting. And again, what is the purpose of the business license?
Yeah, so
I have my opinion.
And John could probably answer better than me, but my first thing would be that it's to help with the code, make sure the city ordinances are being followed, that certain businesses are allowed in certain places.
Okay,
And that those businesses follow the guidelines from the state, that we make sure that those businesses have the requirements, you know, that they have a DOPL number if that's required, that they've registered with the state, those types of things.
are you guys doing that? Are we following up with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and if it's like, so currently, even though it's not a digital system, we have it in our accounting software. We know when your license with the state, your registration with the state expires. When it does expire, we don't let you renew until you renew with the state. And then if you don't renew with the state, we can start penalties until you do.
and again, why? What is that $18 registration at the state that I pay on one of my businesses? What is that doing to me?
Well, I don't know that far.
Okay, again, then the next step down the line is you wanna make sure I paid my $18. Why?
I guess
I think it's a fair
the simple answer is because the state has asked us to.
Let's
And-
push
and
back on the state then.
They give us a lot of money, so we try and comply with what.
How much revenue are we, North Ogden City, getting from business license revenue? You should have a number there. What do we get there?
I could probably tell you. I know we have 1,000 business licenses.
Okay, and are they,
Now, half of those are home occupation, which are a 0 fee. If you run your business out of your house, there's no fee for that license. It is free.
okay,
Now, if the license does have an impact on the community, now that could mean parking, if you have storage, if there's things like that, there is a fee associated with that. I assume the fee is so that if we have to have someone come and enforce or check, if there's a call, it just helps to fund that process.
okay.
It's in my opinion, it's the soft infrastructure.
It's the what?
Soft infrastructure, that's what the mayor keeps saying, but I've embraced that word because really it's something that the city is paying for. But it's this globule of everybody. And it's not,
City's paying, what do you mean the city's paying?
city's paying for it to make sure that the code enforcement, all the little things that add up to it. And in my opinion, there's certain businesses that should pay more based on the amount of soft infrastructure that the city has to provide to either maintain the safety of that organization, be it, you know, hey, a massive apartment complex or a business that gets vandalized a lot, whatever reason, you know, the little things like that. There's a lot of.
So that goes my
Yeah.
next step then. I've brought this up every time. How about a pay for use? Meaning if you're using more code enforcement, if you're using more police,
I agree.
is there a way to charge that? And say, look, Brian, your bar that you put in downtown
Exactly.
uses a lot. We're gonna charge you more.
You have
And,
that.
and then Phil, your bar is a nice bar and doesn't get the police calls, so
course it
you're
is.
paying less. I've got the, you know.
You got the
troublemakers.
rowdy, yeah.
So
I've got
my-
the jeepers, you've
So,
got the bike.
there you go. So my point is, if we reduce the business fee, I mean, I've heard at council meetings, you know, let's charge businesses more, let's make business pay for this. That's very anti-business attitude, and we all know that. And for all business people, we don't want to go into a city hearing, we're gonna make business pay for it, we're gonna make business do this and that. If we go into a city hearing, hey, we're friendly at the city, we're not gonna charge you more than $5 for your business license. However, Brian, you put your bar downtown and you start causing problems, we're gonna ding you every time. Is that discussion being had? Is there a way to entice businesses in initially with a basically zero sum, pay the $5 for the expensive paper, but we want you here, businesses, but if you're using our services, you gotta pay for it. Is that discussion being had?
And
Not
I feel
yet.
like at the level that you're talking, maybe not so much, but I feel like the conversation has been had, and that's why there's a variety of different types of business licenses. So that otherwise we're paying someone to watch, monitor every business and say, okay, here's the impact you've had. Whereas right now we have them in categories and we say, okay, your business falls in this category, this is how much you pay.
But you're already monitoring every time you send a CSO out.
But
The monitoring's being done. You say, look, we're going to Brian's bar, we're not going to Phil's bar. We're monitoring it.
Well, and we don't charge home occupations any business license fee, but it's good for us to know what's going on in the city, just.
There's a $5 fee. We know what's going on. And again, the officers, the CSOs, whoever's gonna know, we're sending people over to Brian's bar every other night because of problems.
I
The point
think
is
part
to-
of the process is, both at the state level and the city level, is
really nothing more than forcing businesses to notify the city what it is they're doing and then paying for the administrative behind the scenes time where plans are being checked, the type of business it is it in the proper zone where it's allowed? There's that behind the scenes where you gotta have a person looking at it, and in my mind, that's what those business license fees are paying for. You're paying for us, the city, having that body behind the door that's looking at your application going, okay, he's got a bar, there's no dancing in the bar, it's not an adult-oriented business, so it can be in these areas. Okay, yes, it's in one of those zones. It's not too close to a school or to a church.
So
You know-
that's a startup fee. Is there a reduction after all that's done? Because every year we're not doing that same process again.
So the renewal is less.
How much less? Again, are we making it business friendly?
Typically-
That's my
So I
point.
think the first time you come in, it's $100, depending on the license, and then typically the renewal is 50 to 75, depending on the business.
And my whole attitude is I hear citizens and council members say, let's charge business. My attitude is, let's encourage business by not having that attitude, and let's have it business friendly. Say, come in, we want to work with you as a city. But again, you put a bar in here, Brian, and we have to service you and take care of this. We're gonna charge you. You're gonna pay for the services you use.
And some of that discussion, Brian, what you're bringing up, especially because with many businesses, if you have a Walmart in your community, everybody knows that you have a huge increase in police calls to that area. There's Walmart, a Target, there's a series that if you get one in, that you're going to have a huge resource draw going on there. And this is not part of today's discussion pretty much, but I know that there have been discussions in the past of, since all of the property tax is being paid, it goes right to policing, right? Every dime of property tax. Does the city do away with property tax and instead institute a public safety service fee? So you don't pay property tax, you pay a public safety service fee. Then with that kind of a thing, what you're talking about would make our ability to look at a map and go, okay, Smiths, you have of all in this area of all the police calls, you have 60% of them. So here's your bill for public safety service fee. It's based on that usage, the draw on the resource where, out in the neighborhoods, the draw isn't there, so they're paying a little bit less, but that's a much bigger 50,000-foot conversation for council to have and decide whether or not that would be a direction to go.
And I think that's my point is this conversation being had?
Oh, it is.
So at the CSO level, yes. At the police service fee level, yes, but that's been handled by the state, and they stepped in and said, can't do it.
Oh, they did.
Yep, last year when they did the transportation utility fee, they said,
Can't
you
do
can
a
charge
police
it, but not for police.
Okay, well, that answers that question.
So,
But
and
I still think at the overall, and maybe a little farther higher level, that certain businesses, like you're saying, do attract more involvement with the city, period. And I mean, I can't remember if it was South Salt Lake or, I just remember looking at other cities about our size. They have quite a few difference, and an adult theme one is $1,000 a year. I mean, that's just right off the top, and
Yeah.
as opposed to other things that are 75. Is that something that we should do? That's kind of a thought.
Well, I've got that written down here. That's something for council to think of. On the business license software, what's your timeline for implementation?
So the company is ready to go. This company has done quite a few cities business licensing. He comes out, he has a team now. He used to come out personally and do it, but he'll come out, they build it specifically tailored to you. This one is the cheaper of the four that we looked at. And it seems like the reviews have all been very positive.
then what's the ongoing, what will it cost next year?
So I think it's $2,500 less every year.
What
So-
does this software do?
So the software just automates a lot of the, having to mail out the business license. So now you can get it by email. It digitizes most of it, as well as, does reminders. Cause right now, so what happens if you don't send your renewal in, if someone isn't reminding or writing it down or something, it's very easy to forget about. And then we have a problem with that business, and then it'll help a lot of the process that we have right now.
It'll help us reduce bodies.
As well as
eventually.
hopefully help people who are struggling to come and get business licenses, hopefully lower the barriers for people to apply for them and get business license.
So there's a financial offset against this too. In savings.
Sounds like
There will be
potential.
eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, and I imagine just as has been happening in my team, eventually we would be able to shrink staff a little more on the front end as the software implements a little more. So,
What's our mailing cost right now? Like total all-in mailing cost? That alone could potentially eat the $8,000 less 2,500, or $5,500 cost next year. I don't know. We could find that number out.
yeah, I haven't looked at what the number is currently, but yes, there'll be a lot of there'll be savings from a few places. Like I said, the office supplies, postage, even time that employees are spending on trying to track things down. It'll be very beneficial for.
The businesses won't get an actual physical license unless they
So
print it out.
they'll get an emailed one that you can print out, and then we will probably still keep the paper and charge you whatever the cost is for us to print it, if that's what you want. I anticipate not too many businesses will worry at that point, because so many businesses, I think, are used to getting a digital one now.
All the business licenses I have that I have to have hung up on the wall for customers to see because of Medicare, Medicaid, they're all emailed to me and I just print them, we fold them up, we put them in a little frame, and where they used to be real fancy card stock
Quit
and all
doing the
this, now,
fancy paper then.
now
Start right
we
there,
just-
save 500
we
bucks
just
a
print them
ring.
out and off we go.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any questions then on administrative services?
What falls under services not classified?
An excellent question. I do. So, this is actually as part of my contract for the city. They give me a vehicle allowance. And so my vehicle allowance is part of this 6,600. And then the other of it is just kind of the little bit of if something is different or something changes, we have a little bit extra money. I think that's $800 of it. So, yeah.
Okay,
And then
go to HR.
perfect timing. Everything okay or, okay. Sorry, I had a message and Katie went out and took care of it for me. And the perfect timing. We are talking about you.
You go running out, sirens start blaring, we get nervous.
Okay,
So walk us through the highlights, Katie.
so mine substantially changed because I got a new employee in my department. So we essentially payroll used to be in our finance department, and our now payroll coordinator is now under human resources. So the only real differences to mine is travel and training. It was the 1,500 for the two of us. We put it at 2,800. We had the Niche Academy last year, which was a program that we used for different types of training for all of our employees. I would like to not use that next year. I didn't think it was as beneficial as I had hoped. However, the trainings that we did save money by going this route than what we've done in the past, so I feel okay about that. I would like to implement a new program. It's Express Evaluations. And this would coincide with Employee Navigator, which is our hiring system. And it basically tracks all professional development. If there's any type of employee discipline, if there's any type of, personnel improvement plan, our annual evaluations, it's all in one spot. Right now, we're doing it through a form on our website and it works. It just would be a little bit easier to have that tracking capability to make sure everybody's on track and getting it completed on time and so forth. So, let's see, the personnel related costs pretty much all stayed the same. We did break it down last year. Every one of the quarters was just kind of all under one. This year it's kind of broken down. So the first, second, third, and fourth quarter, those are kind of luncheons that we hold or events that we hold for all of our employees. And there's always been questions asked about if that's an important thing to have, if we need that, if it's a necessity. And I will be the first one to say, I absolutely think it's a necessity. It allows our employees to get together once a quarter, kind of team builds, get to know other employees that they don't necessarily work with on a daily basis. And just lets them know how much we appreciate them and encourage them to be part of the team. So that's kind of the breakdown on that. And then under small equipment, our payroll coordinator is up for a new computer this year. So that's the guess of the 2,500. And then also we are in the process of continuing to scan all of our department is trying to go completely digital. And so we are in the process of scanning all of our past employee records. And so that's taking a lot of time. So getting her that scanner would help with that when she's got some downtime. So.
Okay, HR questions, Mike?
With the new employee that is now expensed here, did we remove it from where it was previous?
It still is there now, to my knowledge, but we are doing a budget amendment, and so it will switch everything.
Yes, it will
So
be
it'll come out of
eliminated, yeah.
It's coming out of one, going into another, right?
Yes, you've got a $32,000 budget-ish, and you've got 11,000 of that is basically parties. That, did I read that correctly?
You can term it as a party. However, a lot of it is employee recognition. We also have, so under the personal related costs, we have our annual labor law posters, which we're required to have. We've got our ACA federal e-filing, which is required under there. Yes, that the next part is employee recognition. So the employee of the year and things like that. And then.
I'm looking over here on this page 7. You
Sure.
got summer employee party 1,200, first quarter social $200. I mean, you said I can term it party. You've got it labeled party
Sure.
on the biggest one, so it sounds to me like it's part of your holiday party is $8,200. How many employees are coming to those that you oversee? How many come to these parties?
We have a large number. So our holiday party, last year, I want to say we probably had 65 plus people plus their spouse attend, and that's just the annual holiday party. And then as far as the, the pickleball one, this was our first year that we did this last year. If you break it down, it ends up being between $4 and $6 a person. So, I mean, we try to do it as cheaply as possible.
No, I get that. John, that's you then. Is this valuable to you? I mean, I just got back from a conference today and they had some of these types of activities and the attendees and those of us that were vendors didn't go. I mean, literally did not go. So
Yeah.
Is this that valuable? I mean, you as the administrator, what's your opinion of it?
So based on the way we used to get attendance, so at the holiday party, for example, we used to have somewhere around 30 to 40 employees with their spouses. So we're getting 80 to maybe 100 people. And I would say we were not seeing the return. But I do think that these activities, the holiday party is actually in a lot of ways kind of a reward for the spouse. But it is expensive. And then I would say for sure that the quarterly events, our participation has gone up dramatically, in particular with the bowling and the pickleball, and even the Halloween. Those things have really.
Okay, but participation is one thing, value is another. What value are you seeing from these employees? Maybe a question for you too. I mean, team building, I understand the concept or.
So with
What?
John?
Yeah.
Didn't you guys do like a questionnaire to the employees several years back? I remember sitting in these meetings and there was one answer where it was like so blatantly obvious that they just wanted to feel recognized and acknowledged. And
Yeah.
can you just, I can't remember exactly.
I'm trying to remember,
But
but
that, yeah, it.
and so in fact, incorporated in this, there's a hoodie or a shirt, Scott's wearing the little zip up.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
one night.
Let me ask you personally, John, you go to these parties, what value do you get going to these parties? I just don't care about 30 grand and a $13 million budget. I'm just curious, and maybe the other employees as well. What benefit do you guys get? Is it just a fun thing to do to go get a hoodie?
I'll just break them down. So summer party, it's a great way to get the families together. And I like that my kids and my coworkers and they get to meet and know my family a little better. At the holiday party, I like that we're able to recognize employees, and in particular that the council and the mayor get a chance to interact a little better. The others, they're cheap enough that I think we get out of them more than what I would, dollar for dollar, I would say that those quarterly activities are probably a much bigger bang for the buck, but it would be really hard to involve the council and do the recognition. So I think they're worth it. We've talked about moving venues. One year we moved venues and just about got everyone with pitchforks. So we typically go to Timbermine for the holiday party because they have the space, and the fried mushrooms. And that's what
there's
everybody
just
wants.
a different, we're from a different age, right? We didn't have these things when we were young employees.
I hated them when I was young.
They didn't.
Give me the $20 and leave me alone. I don't wanna go.
Other than being on council with the city, I've never worked for a place that did this, and now my business is doing it. We're doing it nationally, and it's a different time, and it's for us older dogs. It's been interesting to see, like when I'm running my staff, what I'm able to accomplish from a morale standpoint, from an output standpoint, by throwing a pizza party and bowling versus giving them a 75-cent or $1 an hour raise. They'll take the pizza and the bowling party.
And I'd argue that was great, because I've done the same thing. I'm like, no, give me the raise. So
But
anyway,
from an introverted engineer's point of view, yes, I hate going, but at the same time, it is a very important tool, and I agree 1,000% that I will defend every dollar. And the point of it is that you are interacting with others outside of work. And I think that was the crazy thing, and I've tried to go as many as I can. Pickleball was awesome. I mean, that was crazy. I'm hoping I can go to the bowling thing. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. And then, but the holiday party was, because you see people out of meetings, because, meetings sometimes get, they're serious, but you're like, holy cow, this guy's kind of funny. I mean, it's just, anyway, and I think it's invaluable, not just for team building, but for recognition of how people are doing, and how to say self-esteem, because that's a little weird, touchy-feely, but I think that's part of it. But anyway, I think Katie's killing it, and I appreciate what she does, and I think with that type of person in charge, I think that kind of helps. And at the same time, she's awesome at social media, which is something we're so fully, and then we're working on that too, to get that rolling. So anyway.
I think it's mostly anecdotal. It's hard to put numbers, spreadsheets together. But as the morale goes up, our turnover goes down, and as turnover is down, training costs and all those things are down. It's one of those where you can't really put it on a spreadsheet, but in my opinion, I'm with Councilman here that I think it's something to do, but certainly something to keep an eye on, that it doesn't become too lavish.
yeah, well, I mean, 10 grand isn't that much money.
Another perspective is too, I think we have a normally high rate of employees who leave and then come back. And I think these
Because of the
types,
pizza party and the bowling.
Yeah.
like, so, and I'm guilty of it. I've left the city once or
Twice before.
I come back, but I think these types of things just build the culture, right? That make people want to belong and fit in. And I think, you know, that saves us cost too on training new people and getting experienced candidates who want to come and fill these positions.
And one last is, John has to attend all the meetings, but that's the nature of your city administrator position, but I have 5-9 meetings a month between 3 council meetings and 2 planning commission meetings. And yesterday I had a 12.5-hour day. So got out of council at 9:40 p.m. I was lucky enough to drop my kids off at school in Kaysville, and then I get here at 9 o'clock. And so to be able to do that sometimes 5 times a month, and then get a recognition in front of 100 or 150 people, where my planner Ryan Nunn was Employee of the Year last year. Several people nominated him, and be able to enjoy getting him to stand up and be recognized in front of everybody is just really big. It's a really big piece of, to me, that you feel like a member of the team, you feel appreciated, you feel like it's more than just a place that we come and work. And I think that's why you've probably come back several times. And North Ogden's been a really, good and supportive and safe place for me and my family over the last 4 years. And I think that being able to do these little things, like $13 million budget and $11,000, and we get little rewards like the hoodie that we all wear, and we've got the sweater, and it's just a big, it's small, but it feels like a big reward for being an administrative staff member we spend a significant portion of our time here.
Okay, so final hypothetical. More budget for parties, lower budget in payroll, or more budget in payroll and lower money in parties?
Well,
Or hypothetical, we don't have to answer that, but
$11,000 divided by 100 FTEs, I'd rather take the party probably than the $100 a year increase.
But I think, but see that question, and I'm gonna change your hypothetical. I think that if you offered our employees, hey, $100 Christmas bonus or the holiday party, it might be split. But it would be interesting, that first year might be split and how it might shift afterwards, because there would be a significant portion that I would miss it. Even though I don't love social gatherings, I would still miss it.
Well, I've done that with my employees, and every one of them wanted the bonus, but my bonus wasn't $100, so.
Yeah, yeah, a little more than what a steak dinner might have cost.
Anyway,
What I want to know is, are we accumulating his seniority every time he leaves and comes back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or are we making him start over?
The few times I've come over, I've started from the
Oh,
bottom.
just kidding, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We're down to 32 minutes. Let's go to 1049. You don't have it labeled, John.
This is general government. So this is kind of the catch-all, non-departmental is what we often will call it. This is where insurance comes. This is where our citywide IT budget is in a lot of ways. It's not a change, but it's a big expense here is our servers. Bryce told me they were only going to cost $25,000, and the latest quote we got was $39 for a server. So that's, as we
Which
talked about,
line
it's
is
going
that?
up. This little red one.
Yeah, 1049.
Yeah,
Oh, right there.
255. So there'll be some stuff, and because of that, we're talking about getting 1 server instead of 2. And just trying to see how we can make it work. But then the next one is you get down to professional services. A lot of these are these almost fall into those kind of subscriptions.
Didn't we do away with the magazine?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Uh,
say. Website hosting, connection managing.
Okay.
sorry, my eyes are not working here. Oh, yeah.
10,000.
Website hosting, and then right below that is not that one,
Not that one.
not that one. One below it,
Connection. Oh, yeah.
Connection Magazine.
Hey.
And there's more of my party budget.
There's 10
right
grand.
there.
2 parties.
Oh,
Congratulations,
sorry.
Steve.
No, we will catch that.
But
And I would bring that up as a thing. With Jamie gone, we might have caught that. We might not have. So this is a good thing for the group to say, hey, we recommend you not do the magazine.
But
So we will take it out of the budget.
Some of it is you're still printing the newsletter, right?
We stopped doing that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we did our last one last month.
March, yep.
And so,
Oh, that's right, we had a transition.
yeah, so, that 10,000 will go away.
To be honest, I see this stuff on Instagram more than anything else, so.
How many people complained about the magazine? Many?
When it first came out that we were switching, we did have a large group of people that were, just upset just because it's a tradition and it's been around for so long. However, I think, with what we're putting out now, I think people are liking it and we're always open to suggestions as well. So if someone has something like, hey, this would be a really cool idea for the newsletter for next month, let us know and, we can.
Well,
entertain
I think
working
one of
with
the
it.
problems with the plans is it was 3 weeks in arrears before you got it.
Yeah, that was horrendous.
How large of a group was it?
As far.
You say the large group that were unhappy, how?
That were
large?
unhappy. I mean, you hear about the ones that are more, I would say, the ones I heard from probably 20, 30 people. I mean, not when I say a large group, but
That sounds pretty small. It sounds to me like it was a good elimination.
yeah.
Well, and I think again, like Chris mentioned earlier, with Katie has upticked our social media as part of the transition to just help get the word out on stuff. So it's been an effective adjustment
Yeah.
at this
Good
point.
transition.
John, one
yeah.
question I have is back up on 49,250.
Yep.
The $8,500 increase in unemployment contingency. Do we have some expected payouts coming this year?
So we have some commitments which will go beyond July 1.
Okay, and so that's what the
Yeah.
increase is. Okay.
Yeah, so there's some there.
Figured that's what it was. But
And the other thing that, just in case you're unaware, the state unemployment folks they don't typically say no anymore. So pretty
Nope.
much
They never
everyone gets
have.
unemployment. We used to win probably half of them, and lately we have not won
How
half.
long are they giving unemployment? How many
6
weeks?
months. And
so
then,
it's almost not worth fighting anymore.
yeah,
So what are the reasons for unemployment that they're getting it? I mean, is there a good reason for termination that we can fight, or, I mean,
so
they still award it?
the last reason that I was really frustrated with is that one of the individuals we terminated got unemployment because we didn't immediately fire them. We didn't put them on administrative leave for a month. We just started looking at it and doing some evaluation and saying, okay, this event was kind of the culmination of all these events, and we took a month to make the decision. They said, well, then it wasn't necessary you fired him.
And you went to a hearing of that?
Uh-huh.
And the judge gave it to him?
Yep. So, and that's it. The other city attorneys have kind of said, look, if you don't go in and treat it like a full scale
blazing,
court
huh?
thing, then, and they said, even then you're not going to win most of the time. So,
That's been my experience, but I have had some where I won the hearing, but they still awarded benefits. They just didn't charge my account. I'm like, it
yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
yeah. So it's interesting.
Have you had, on that, have you followed to see if he's gotten another job? I mean, because if he gets another job or.
So some of them have, yes. But yeah, so it's all part of that.
Okay.
A good chunk of them do end up, I think one of them still is unemployed. But some of the others are employed. And the other thing that's unique is, as a business owner, is if they're employed at a new agency and then they get fired in that 12 months and get
They can come
unemployment,
back and
we're
get
on the
it.
hook for a
And
portion
that's
of that
total
still.
bullcrap.
So,
Yeah, that's total BS.
the biggest item in this is obviously insurance. That covers all of our liability, all of our building, all of our vehicles. Couple of years ago, we made the decision to self-insure vehicles like our trucks, the 1/2-ton and 3/4-ton pickups we have. That ended up saving us at the time, I want to say it was $30,000 a year in a reduction of what this would have been. And it has proved to be beneficial. I'm not going to say anything more than that and jinx us, but
Hold on, so.
But didn't we raise the?
Cities are allowed to self-insure? How
yeah.
do you self-insure?
So we're not self-insured for liability. We're self-insured for the loss of the vehicle.
So, okay.
Yeah. So, and we're not self-insured for the damage to another vehicle.
Okay.
It's only
It's
our
just-
loss.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The deductible raising was everything?
Well, that was the deductible. We raised that deductible on vehicles to
The point where.
the point where we're
Yeah,
self-insured.
that makes sense. Okay.
And then, yeah, but this basically incorporates, if I remember right, it's a 3% increase in insurance. We've had a really good claim year this year, and we have some of our old claims that were bad that are falling off of our 5-year kind of evaluation window. So
Who's
we,
this policy through?
currently our broker is Olympus Insurance. And they
Who's the provider though?
use, or we are with, oh, I can see their logos.
That's simpler.
Travelers.
Auto owners.
Travelers is one of them. Aqua, or not Aquamarine, but Inland Marine is another one. So some,
They
they
have a lot
can,
of boats here, huh?
some of them are compartmentalized.
That's fine.
But, so they just go out and provide and every year they give us a new bid on who's the best underwriter.
How's
So,
our mod rate tracking over like the 5 year?
we've been okay. But we had two really rough claims. That were, one was $250,000 for an accident that happened in the park and some things like that put us out of whack, but we're getting back. And then like on our, workers' compensation insurance, we're down around 0.7. If that means that we pay 70% of what a normal company of our size pays, or of our, our government entity. And so we've been really good with our, they call that the E-mod rate.
This is not workers' comp. This is just basically vehicle insurance?
It's everything.
Everything.
It's workers' comp, it's vehicles, it's buildings, it's liability. It's all one broker, one line. And then this is one of those numbers that on that sheet I sent out today gets split out among the departments in that admin transfer fee.
This includes PD as well.
Yes. And Utah has done some very favorable things that have helped us avoid some of the insurance trends in the nation, with liability for officers that have saved us, probably $100,000 would be my guess. Just in liability. And then the mayor has money to buy lunch for all the mayors once a year. And then there is in this category, you can see that here's the hoodies, the $5,500 for the hoodies. We don't typically spend all of that, but we do spend some. And then the miscellaneous, when we did the PD open house and when we do our trail heads, and we've got a opening of the waterworks experience over here that's going to happen in July. This is where we bring that money out of. And I thought this used to include the mayor's slushy fund. It was a contingency amount. Oh, no, that was in admin. But there's a $5,000 amount that the mayor has kind of as an emergency. If me and him decide we can use it, and then we report to the council that we use it. But that's, we haven't touched it in 3 years. So
Use some of it to get that TV in the
There's
amphitheater.
your money. Get his slush fund.
I think we ended up getting a donation
Oh, that's right.
that covered it. But so anyways, it's been, we've been good there.
So on the insurance costs, have you already got the bid back from the
Not,
broker?
we sent them all of our updated schedules for vehicles and stuff last week. And so we will get the bid here in the next probably 2 or 3 weeks.
So that $495 is a guesstimate.
Right, yeah, the $20,000 increase is what we think it'll be.
So it could be more or less.
Yeah, and our broker's really good. Oftentimes they're here every month anyways, participating in our safety meetings. And then we meet with them talking about policy 3 times a year. So we kind of mid-year, and then we'll meet kind of at the beginning of the budget. They give us kind of trends that are happening, and then we meet with them when they come and say, okay, here's the bids, and here's who we recommend and why.
With the 23 to 25 rate increase from 326 to 475, just normal increases, because my insurances have gone up similar to that about,
That
10%.
uh,
Or were there some claims that affected it?
there were some claims in there. Yeah, so what ended up happening is we had kind of, I would say 3 big claims in 6 years. And so that year, all 3 of them were on there. This year, one of those was dropping off. And so, yeah,
So I guess their rates are staying basically the same. We're just getting through those claims.
yeah. Okay, I think our next one is gonna be down on page.
Any other
13.
questions
Oh,
with general government? Sandy? Okay, Brian, Mike, okay. And what's the next one? The last one?
Planning,
Planning.
well,
Oh,
second to
boy.
last one,
Second to last. Oh, boy. We'll be here all day now.
or I guess third, we got building and and the really fun one.
So so planning's budget stayed relatively
13.
flat, except for we did add the Placer AI economic development software. And what that is they use a proprietary mix of Bluetooth signalized data that is scrubbed out for anybody's personal, like they can't find personal information. And it meets the state of Utah's recent code that was passed that says you can no longer use software based on Bluetooth collection or cell phone data collection that can be traced back to somebody's individual home or, pull their information. So they're covered there. Every time you download an app and you opt in to letting your phone collect that data, they utilize several of those areas. This can be used in a number of different ways, but for the most part, it does market studies, or that's how we wanted to utilize it. It's $24,000 annually. We have found that one market study that we did for the Southtown Center as part of a project funded by our regional council, we spent $20,000 with Zion's Public Finance to have them do a market study, a leakage study, a rooftop analysis to help us better define what businesses could potentially come in there if we were to redevelop or help with redevelopment of that site. And those standalone market studies might be good for 12 months, and they're 12 or 18 months, but the market moves quickly enough. And with the Placer AI software, they can go back in time 7 years, but then we could pull one of those every day that we had it. So we could pull it for individual locations. We had the police think of use cases, Public Works and Parks Department think of use cases. One that we were thinking about was, since we have 7 years, but you could go back in time for data, is we could analyze every single parade that's happened for the Cherry Days, and you can pinpoint the day, the number of hours, and a geographic. You can geofence the area, and you could see the number of participants who attended. And the interesting thing is they've got about 30 million unique users across the United States, so 10% of the nation's population. So they have enough of the people that it's a statistically relevant percentage of people in the nation. So they take the actual attendees and then they're able to project out based on these attendees in Utah that this is what we actually think were there. And so that way we could analyze whether 3100 North, 2600 North, or Washington Boulevard was better, worse, or indifferent from a parade standpoint. We have some individual businesses. We found out through this software and a presentation that our local Kroger, our Smith's, is the number one, I was going to say attended, but visited Smith's in the state of Utah. And we had 3 million visits last year. And that's not individual visits. That includes people who live on the hill or live in the city and go to it multiple times a day. But you can pull out the unique individual hits. So we think the software will be useful. We think even if we only use it for 1 year, use case on analyzing our parks usage, optimizing watering, seeing what the heaviest usage days of multiple municipal facilities might be is reasonable. We've suggested now, and we're going to suggest with the council, that we pull that out of the general fund, out of the planning budget, and put it into the RDA budget. So I think it's a useful use of the RDA funds. And the RDA has how much left over after non-allocated funds? A few $100,000.
More than the 24.
It has plenty more than the 24,000. And if we were to get from this software, if we could land or help, say Barker Depot over here that's developing, if we could assist Ryan Forsyth in leading tech development with landing one good sales tax producing business, we would turn around that $24,000 in sales tax revenue really quickly. So a lot of people are using it specifically for economic development, but just understanding our, better understanding our watering schedule based on the highest use days of the parks would be a useful, I think, use case for the software. So that's our biggest budget increase. The only thing that we do ask, we have a very small budget, and planning is not one for a sunk cost. The state requires us to be here. The state requires a general plan and in order to do zoning, and we manage all the Title 11 zoning code and the changes that inevitably happen every year. And our fees they don't cover the cost of myself and Ryan Nunn. So we're not like the building department that's designed to cover itself. So our only real piece of this budget that we could pull out would be our travel and training, and we attend local Utah American Planning Association trainings. That's our professional organization where also those organization fees are paid by the city. And then I have a 4-year-old Dell computer that I think is on its last legs based on how much it heats up during the day. So I did put a new computer in this year. So our turnover time for laptops is between 3 to 5 years.
Normally your budget, yeah, there you go, 16 grand, normal budget, you got 24 grand from that. Is it plan on 1 year trial with that software?
Yeah, you can do, if you do a 2-year contract, it's like 21.5. So we could look at with them if you want to do the 2-year contract. Unfortunately, you can't get the 24,000 and then be like, oh, well, we want it for a second year and get the better rate. You have to, do the 2-year at that point. One nice thing is that we cannot obligate future councils to spend money. So if we were to do the 2-year contract, there's a no fault contract out in that if council number 2 in 2026 were to say, nix this, that we don't owe them the difference. So it will be a conversation piece with the council to see if it's a 1-year or a 2-year contract.
John, what's your thought on that? 1 or 2 years?
I
think it
would,
sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's probably worth trying. I think there's other ways to encourage businesses to come in.
Yeah.
But I think it would help having the data to back it up.
I think if we did the 1 year, then we would know enough information that we would know if we would just keep it in perpetuity, right? And so the next year we wouldn't pay 24 again, we'd probably do the 2-year contract for the 21.
Yeah.
But especially with the transportation utility fee, I know we've talked about, this software, I think can help us meet the standards to implement that appropriately without paying a consultant $8,000 to $20,000. So I think that this year seems like a good chance to utilize it.
What's your thoughts on that, please?
What's my thoughts?
Yeah, I'm new still. so
I like it.
I think it sounds like a
I've
good
watched
idea.
our economic development committees over the years. And we've had lots of committees and we've had lots of members on the committees. But the committees haven't really, there's not a lot of fruit that those trees have borne. I think this is using the data to tell us what we used to pay consultants and go to the trade shows in Las Vegas and other places. Rather than, paying to do that, we can pull this data up anytime, anywhere. And it's not just business, John mentioned parks. We can look at parks and say, well, which park is getting the most use? And, we can direct funds that direction to make sure that park doesn't fall apart because it's the one that's getting hammered.
I think that's probably the more valuable route for this for us. I think for the economic development, it might help, but I think the businesses that are gonna come in or that are looking, they're also doing their own research.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not gonna necessarily take our sales pitch to come in, they're gonna do their own research and say.
Right.
So.
I do want to be able to push back on, so I'll pick on Leading Tech and only because Ryan Forsyth lives in Kaysville and we have a friendship and a whole conversation. But, when they come to you and they say, these are the only tenants we can get, or we need another tunnel car wash in the city because I cannot get any other tenants. It allows me to go out and say, well, based on my economic software that I'm utilizing, and you might be, utilizing your own, these are tenants that you should go out and look at based on our area median income and the number of rooftops we have and our leakage study and our potential reach for businesses that won't cannibalize other businesses. And why don't you reach out to them? So I would gladly utilize the software to hand it off to any developer in the city and say, please go reach out to these folks, because we don't do sure site development. And North Ogden we are a destination community. We don't have a freeway that passes through us or a commuter rail station. We'll never get a big box Target. We get a lot of services that are lunchtime services because our daytime population is similar to our evening population. We kind of have the same number of people come in as leave during the day. And then we need 5 to 9 p.m. services. We need a sit down restaurant, honestly, is what we really need in the city. But I do get, we get pushback from businesses that say, this is the only thing that could possibly go here. And I want to be able to have the data to say, no, actually have you show me that you've reached out to these folks. And you're right that most businesses, like if a Target or a Walmart or any big box knocks on your door, they know more about your city than you do.
Mhm.
They've done the analysis and the research and they typically know. But that doesn't stop us from reaching out to like Olive Garden, you know, we're probably big enough and far enough away from Olive Garden that we can get something like that. And I don't know if Ryan's touched base with them.
I know Sandy really wants another tunnel car wash down there by Village of Brown.
Good. I want a ban on tunnel car washes. I think we've got enough, like calculate the number of cars per tunnel car washes we've got. But we will ask for the RDA to help us pay for that. And it'll pull it out of my small budget, which would return my budget back to what it was
Awesome.
before.
Questions?
I think it's a great tool.
Questions? Sandy? Okay, let's move on to building inspection.
Okay, building, no dramatic changes. It is essentially straight across what they've done. They haven't seen an increase like in their training or things like that, in a way that we felt like there was a real issue to hedge against. Although I can see here on our motor pool lease, we need to fix that. Because they no longer have 3 vehicles because they don't have 3 employees. So we will fix that. So it'll go down a little bit.
They only have 2 employees, correct?
Yeah, because we haven't had the same number of permits coming in, so we're able to scale it down. When one of our folks retired, it kind of timed perfectly. And anyways, just
Are the cities allowed to capitalize a lease? I know in the private sector you can.
we don't really, no, because we do, well, we have 2 different type of leases. Yeah, we have the buyout lease where we own it at the end. They just call it a lease, but these ones we wouldn't capitalize because it's a 1 year and just done.
Okay.
Yeah. And these, for example, we typically are leasing a vehicle that has a really high resale value. We turn it over in a year, and 1 year we actually made when we had the hybrid not 4Runners, the tiny,
Equinox,
no, the
Forerunner, or
RAV4s. We paid for the lease and made $2,000 on the sale. So.
Party budget. Any extra
But-
money, grab it for the party budget.
Dave and Ty and the people who are managing the vehicles, they're very focused on how we can keep vehicles with low maintenance and low annual cost. And it has been working really good lately, until we've had this year, some of our trucks are a little rough, but that's okay. The market dropped out on the half-ton pickups, the Ford half-ton pickups, I should say. So.
Okay, so now we're looking at 1051.
I have one quick
Yes.
question. This, inspection services outsourced.
So solar permits, we outsource that to WC3 and they do electrical and the inspection because it takes just a different certification that's a little harder to get that we haven't asked our folks to get yet.
Does that also include the state code that requires us to be able to schedule a building inspection within a certain number of hours of request? And sometimes in really busy times, we have to get a third-party inspector to come in.
It technically incorporates that, but we haven't had to touch into that pool very often because we can meet the 3-day scheduling window that the state requires right now. And then I think the last one is Aquatic Center.
Is that 1051?
No, that CSO is 1051, right?
Oh, okay.
It's on the back of the last.
Mm,
No?
Yep.
Yeah. There.
There it is.
Yeah, so this is another one where in theory, the expenses are staying the same as last year. With our part-time employee wages, we have some returners, but we usually have the same amount of return as we had last year. So we don't have that year over year necessarily increase because people come back in at $12 an hour as opposed to everyone getting increased by, 3 or 6% or whatever. The hope is that, and I'll tell you the ones that we're hoping we can see some changes on. It's the biggest line is the 285, the utilities, with the upgrades that we are doing to the pool, to the pumps, and some of the chemicals, which is 430, and then the pool maintenance. We are hoping optimistically that those will come in lower, because like the pumps, we've been using just a constant velocity pump as opposed to a variable
So
drive.
you're putting drives on.
Yeah, and so by doing that, we'll be able to scale them up and down as opposed to what they've been doing is throttling them with how big the valve is opened. So if they wanted to only send through 10 gallons a minute, they would close the valve almost all the way, where with this, we'll be able to dial the pump all the way down and save quite a
Save
bit
lot
on
of
energy.
Being a city, can you take the rebate from the utility?
There are programs we can, but
How many
the,
horse pumps are they, do you know?
don't know.
I would imagine a good size.
I mean, the
So
outlets are
there's-
big.
There's good rebates, or there has been good rebates on drive upgrades.
Hey, we will ask about that. But this is the quintessential discussion of the pay per use, as we've talked, right? And the council is very aware of it. You know, it was brought up last night that in 20 years, if we're not building a fund balance and we keep injecting general fund money into this, that we won't have the money to fix the pool in 10, 15, 20 years, whenever it wears out again.
Do we have an estimated life on that?
So
How old's the pool now? It's 10,
20,
20, 30, 20 years.
right,
old. So
right
we're
at about
40 years
20.
out of it?
With the redo, probably. And then at a certain point when you, the wall system, so usually you think a pool is a concrete bowl. Ours is actually a stainless steel wall system. And I think the useful life on that is pretty close to the 50 years. So in theory, you might be able to extend it, but it'll be on its third liner if we get to that point. And more than likely, the next round that we're doing won't last the full 20 years. It's probably 15 years would be about the max, just because it's not everything's brand new and you're starting to mix old and new. But there is also quite a few safety things going on here. But we've seen some positive. We were looking at hiring a maintenance person, and ended up hiring an assistant manager for Justin instead, which was a little bit cheaper position. And then Justin is taking on the maintenance role. So that, saved us 20 to, well, if you include benefits, because they're not technically, it's not a full benefited position. You're talking about $40,000 or $50,000 in savings there. For the annualized, but that doesn't mean that next year we're gonna have to hire someone to replace that person after they leave for the season. Anyways, it's just, this is probably the roughest fund in the city, because it doesn't pay for itself. Last year, the recommendation was to increase the gate fee to $11.25, from Jamie, the finance director. Council kind of went halfway and went to $8. And we will be talking about that with council, is do we want to increase it, another dollar, or what's the feeling? The hardest thing about it is I think the price elasticity is really good. I don't know that people really care how much they pay. I know that sounds funny, but it's more of the temperature. If it's warm, people will go to the pool. If it's cold, they won't. And I don't know that the $11 versus the $10 matters, or $8, just because, a movie is $12, right? A Big Mac meal is $10. So it's just people, that's nothing to have your kid go and play for 3 hours.
Let me give you my 2-minute spiel on it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna tear
sorry.
it out, shut it down, get rid of it. It's a waste of money. Okay, that's where I stand.
Did you talk to my wife?
I have talked, I mean, I've said this before, the pool needs to break even at least on operations. In 10 years, it hasn't. The numbers that I saw last said an $84,000 loss. Ruby said it's a $30,000 loss regardless. There's no reason that in 10 to 20 years, we have not been able to make that thing break even on operational costs again. I say, put the finances out on the front of the building. If anybody complains why it's $12, you say, look, because the residents of North Ogden are funding this to the tune of $100,000 to $400,000 or $500,000 a year if you're factoring in the depreciation costs. And I think that needs to be stated. And you put a list out there, say, look, in 20 years, we're not gonna do another pool because we're done losing $500,000 a year. We people can understand that, but regardless, the operational costs have got to break even.
Yeah.
And I say, if we're not gonna do it in 1 year, we do it at least in 2, the most in 2. So if we're gonna do a budgeting, a price increase this year of another $1 or $2, next year it's gonna be whatever it has to be to break even. And if we're already losing money on it, which we are and have been doing for 20 years, why don't we raise the price and find that equilibrium point to where nobody comes and then we know, and then we back off of that? That's my take.
Or have that flexible thing. Was it Disney that's doing that? Where they have, it's
Yeah,
height.
spending.
high demand. There you go. The sunny
On
day
a
price is
Saturday,
$20.
it's this, yeah.
Hey,
And
guess what?
Rainy days is 10. There
We,
you go.
we do actually offer a discount on the colder days. If it's
Surge
under a
pricing.
temperature, we get, but we
But-
don't do surge pricing at this
But
point.
again, people are gonna complain. We're trying to avoid the complaining.
And
Put the
there's your
numbers
alarm.
out there. Tell them the truth. And again, I'm gonna tear it down, shut it down, get rid of it. Tired of losing.
Call
money
me and
on it.
let me know what you really feel.
Yeah, Thanks, you guys. I really have to
Thanks,
run.
bud.
So,
See ya.
See you next time.
Yeah,
Okay,
On the aquatic center, is there an opportunity to bring in food trucks and charge them a higher fee? I mean, they've got a captive audience.
so we do get money from the concession stand where we rent that out. Pizza Man is the current one that has the contract for that for this next season. We've talked about bringing it in-house, which would potentially generate another $40,000 maybe as revenue. We've talked about selling advertising space on banners on the fencing, and Justin's looking at a lot of ways. We've even talked about renting the tables that have umbrellas. You
Lots
know,
of
'cause
sponsorship opportunities.
yeah, well, and when we mentioned it to employees, 2 or 3 of them were like, if I could rent a table and know that I could show up at 2 and I would have it from 2 to 4, they're like, I'd pay $25 for that in a heartbeat. Cause
Yeah.
they know they've got a spot. So we're trying to implement some of those things. There are some software limitations, and I don't want to invest a bunch of money in software that negates all the profits. And so we're trying to kind of dance that line. But you're spot on. And if any of you have any ideas on ways, let's talk about them, because Justin is not afraid of trying anything. He's the aquatic center
Justin's great. manager. Yeah, Justin's great.
I've never been there. I've driven by, but I don't know what's around the area if it lends itself to the food truck thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a place you can safely put them.
When I'm gonna say when we get the Placer AI software to positively speak to Council Member Pulver, I think you will find that our pizza, Little Caesars, Arby's, McDonald's, they see a significant uptick in the summer. And because we'll be able to draw a cage or a box around the pool and see where people are going before and after. And I bet we'll see a significant benefit to the businesses. And I'm not negating anything that Brian says with that comment, in that there's some offsets of maybe some sales tax revenue comes in, but there is also the factor that, and again, this doesn't negate anything he says, but we are by far the most financially responsible pool in maybe even in Utah. That still doesn't mean it pays for itself.
Brigham City is 100K in the hole every year.
And it's pretty well operated, but it's a very small pool too.
Right, but I think the point is, and then it's philosophical again, is nothing pays for itself. Well, there's certain things that will, or close to it. Like, you know, the rec department will never pay for themselves because you have to pay for an employee to run it. So, I mean, unless you cover that cost too, but I guess the point is that at a certain point, something is a city service.
It's an amenity.
It's an amenity, and it's not gonna break even, and it's not even designed to be break even in certain instances. So we have to determine, council-wide, do we suck it up and the pool is an amenity, you know? But the thing is that, and my wife agrees with Brian, is the fact that at a certain point, we shouldn't be supplementing Pleasant View and Harrisville to come to our pool. You know, they should pay their own way, so to speak. Anyway, and that's.
What escalates.
Well, what I have
the
written,
cost for them to come in.
what I have written down here for the aquatic center, is Sandy, anything from you on aquatics? Mike, anything else?
Not additional on that.
What I wrote down was one that suggests to council, and they've had this discussion before, but I think it needs to be looked at more seriously, is increasing the fees, having a 2-tiered fee system. First, so non-residents are paying a higher, so if if council decides this year for residents, we're gonna go from $8 to $9, because there is the subsidy that comes from North Ogden City as a whole. But the break-even cost is $11.75, then that ought to be the out-of-town, the non-resident cost, that if you're from Pleasant View, Harrisville, anywhere but North Ogden, you gotta show a driver's license or a utility bill or something that shows that you do live here. And, the license has to match the person who's standing there, and they have to be coming in, takes a little bit of work. But if you're from any of those other communities, your price to get in is $12. Because your tax base doesn't help subsidize this pool.
The look that I did, it was like 40 to 50% more for somebody that didn't live in the town.
Yeah.
Like Sandy and Draper, some of those towns.
Yeah.
It's a 40 to 50% hike.
Yeah. So so here are the suggestions that we have, that I've written down as we've gone through. If you think of any others as I go through these, yell and we'll put them on here. First one was for police to report to council on the flock and give us an idea of whether or not it's a worthwhile investment. I personally think it is, but it'd be nice to have the data to show that, okay, if we catch one bad guy, it's worth it. If we can,
What was the date? I said April of last year?
yeah, I
I
think
looked
that's,
it up.
yeah, something like that.
It was basically an update.
A suggestion to put a more concerted effort on gaining donations for the drone. I know a couple of individuals that would personally donate to help offset the cost for that drone, so we'll suggest to council that they make more of a public effort, even if it's just on the Facebook page, those kinds of things that we can share around, and if we can get a couple $1,000 to help alleviate that cost on the drone, that'd be a good thing. Conversations on additional CSO. Encouraging, look at ways to encourage ACH payments over credit card payments so we can reduce those credit card fees. Discussion on business licensing. In the vein that Brian was talking about, making sure that our business licensing, one that gives us the control that we need, because I think we have to have that. Otherwise, you'll just have businesses popping up and they'll do whatever they darn well please, and it'll be chaos. But also making sure that our fees and the way that we do them, I think having it online will help, makes it so that we're a business friendly kind of place. And we'll give a reminder to remove line 1049-330, the Connection magazine, 10 grand. That takes that budget's increase from 22% up over last year down to about 11% up over last year, which is good. We'll remind to look at the rebates on the drive upgrades, and see if there are some rebates that are possible for the drive upgrades. And then on the aquatic center, raising fees for non-residents, raising the gate fees, attempting to break even on op costs, and then of course the philosophical discussion. At what point do we look at it as a business? I think all of our recreation parks, everything. At what point do we look at it as a business and demand a break even versus an amenity that's provided that creates that value of community that you can't quantify.
Yeah.
Right? We can't put a dollar figure on the value of having a community, of having a pool, of having our parks. We can certainly feel the value, but we can't put a dollar data value on that. So anything else that, Mike, anything that you would have us?
I had a couple of other things
Okay.
written down. So up in the green waste area,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of backfill that's happening up there currently.
A lot of what?
Backfill.
Okay.
A lot of dirt being.
Yeah, it's all from city projects.
That's all city. Is there an opportunity to let contractors dump in there? Cause you can't build on that. That's just filling it in.
Technically we can't build on that property, period. It's deed restricted to be open space.
So.
Can we allow contractors to dump
they're dumping
there
clean
for a
fill.
fee? Clean fill.
I'll look at it. I think the standard we had are dealing with the state agency that regulates that as soon as we start charging for it, then it changes it changes what we can do with it. And I think it turns it into it might increase the oversight so much that it makes it inefficient for us to use it. So we've just used it for all of our projects.
So that's just all city
Mhm.
still what's going
Well, in fact, the old Ogden High School's there. So that before much, obviously that was torn down 40 years ago, but the old Ogden High where the Shopko was is up there, and but it's slowly been less and less, and now it's just city stuff.
What else did you have, Mike?
So it's not really tied to what we've been talking about today, but I think it was you that brought up the tax on EVs being so low and our roads.
That's at
getting
a state
pounded.
level.
It is, but I looked into it. So there's $143 that's added to EVs when they license at the state.
Okay,
But the price at the pump is 57 cents a gallon, of which 38.5 cents is state.
right.
So, I mean, if you do the simple math on that, it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars apart.
Yes,
And I don't know, if anybody here has got relationships with the House or the Senate people from our districts, that we start those discussions, to get a bill moving forward to bring that up where it really
Yeah.
should.
I'm having dinner with a couple of them tonight. I'll bring that up.
Yeah, it's, if somebody gets a tank of gas a week, you're $598 in total tax per year versus 143.
Yeah.
They're pretty far apart. And they do a lot more damage. I think
Yeah,
you brought
they're
that up.
twice very
Yeah.
heavy. Yeah, very heavy.
I think that was all I had that we haven't hit on.
Okay. Sandy?
Okay.
Okay, and I don't have anything else. What's our next in 2 weeks?
So for council on May 1st, it is the final review of fund balances and finalizing budget priorities, which in this case, we'll be talking about the transportation utility fee
Okay,
and salaries are gonna be two big topics.
so
for
our
that.
next, in 2 weeks, we'll talk about the transportation utility fee, salaries. So you'll be prepared to give us a presentation,
Yeah.
particularly on salary
Mhm.
philosophy that the city's adopted.
And then I would also, let's do the admin transfer sheet on that.
Okay,
Cause I think that's a kind of a general policy that
Yeah.
it'd be good for this group to better understand it. So,
Okay.
Final recommendation.
just for your information, Sandy and Mike, the city's current employment philosophy has been an attract and retain philosophy, rather than just a maintain or, just kind of let them fly. So the city for a long time was kind of a training ground. For we'd get new employees in, we'd train them, they get the certifications, and they'd be off to somebody else. I think rectified that very well in the last 10 years, 7, 8 years in particular. And so that's been the philosophy. There's a cost that comes with that, and we'll talk about that in 2 weeks as we talk about salaries and benefits and all that kind of good stuff. I think part of that discussion that we'll have in 2 weeks will also be the benefit coverage rate. It's good for public employees, but I think it's always healthy to have that conversation. Is it at the right point?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is not just your salary, but also what your total compensation is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because sometimes having, if I have a friend that works for an organization that pays 95% of his health care. I know somebody else that gets 100% covered. But their salaries are a little bit lower than what would be competitive for the market, and both of them are thrilled because healthcare is such a huge cost. And they have very nice plans. It's not just your bottom of the barrel kind of contingency plans. They're very nice health plans, and the employer sees that as more of a value to the employees than actual money in their pockets. So we
I think
can,
that was something that was kind of hit on at that joint meeting, that the 401k for law enforcement here is
Mhm.
higher than theirs is, but their health insurance was paid at a higher rate.
that's right. Yeah. So that'll be all part of that discussion that we'll have in a couple of weeks, and then we'll go from there.
No, on personnel, I think another thing that might be good to maybe start gathering information is you know, doing stuff in-house, it appears like we're saving a lot of money by doing things ourselves versus hiring it out. Might be good to track some of that.
Yeah.
And show that to the citizens that, you know, you're getting a bigger bang for your buck doing it in-house versus contracted. And maybe have some of the departments show what those savings are.
And we have done that a lot. For example, that water works area that's gonna be dedicated sometime June, July. We got a bid to install the stuff that's over there now, and I think it was over $100
I
grand.
remember you talking about that,
And we did it ourselves. You know, there's some material in time, but definitely didn't cost us $100 grand.
right? But I think your parks people, there's a lot of overlap. You're using people in different departments to
Kind of hard to
get
quantify
to the
too,
end.
yeah.
It is hard, but I think there's a value that you've been able to demonstrate. That was one of the first things that I looked at when I started with this was, you know, we really saving money doing it in-house, but it's, you've shown that there's some savings doing it in-house.
Yeah, on a lot of things, we have, I wouldn't say been burned, but we have found sometimes that maybe it wasn't worth it. When we built the police station, we epoxy coated the hard interview rooms is what we call them, where the drunk people sit until they go to jail. And we saved some money, but it was not
Hard work.
fun work.
Yeah.
But we ended up with a better epoxy, so it's kind of a trade-off.
So our next meeting is 4/23 in 2 weeks. Everybody good with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
And what are we,
John, I think
So-
one other thing that we'll want to discuss in 2 weeks, if we can, is revenue projections. What we're looking at this year as far as, what our property tax projections are, what we're anticipating on growth, and also on our sales tax.
Okay.
What we're, because we should have another month of sales tax records come in before that point.
Maybe the day of.
Maybe the day of, yeah.
Yeah.
But we can at least have that conversation and, if we feel necessary, give some suggestion to council on projection revenues. We don't want to under project, but we don't want to over project as well.
And I will send out the presentation we did at the group. I know several of you watched it, but it does give the numbers of what we're projecting this year, and then it has, this is what it was last year. So we can send that, and I'll send the worksheet, even though it's not done, just so you can see, because those revenue projections are in there. So we'll send those two things, either right now or first thing in the morning.
Okay,
And what's the date that the draft budget will be finalized?
May
May
13th, it has to be adopted.
Okay.
so we'll have all of our, and that's a tentative budget. It's an operational budget. Because if there's a truth and taxation or whatever, that it may stretch clear into August before that truth and taxation, but it's the operational budget that council and the city will operate off of until a final budget, is completed in June, and has to be in June what, John?
Second meeting in June 23rd. I think it has to be done by the 23rd, which means it's the second meeting, which is like the 19th. or-
Yeah, something like that. And we'll have a final presentation that, where we'll go over just kind of a regurgitation of all the suggestions that we've had for the year, before that final budget, or probably the night of the tentative budget.
Okay.
And then our work will pretty much be done at that point. We're now to public comments. I see we have one person in attendance with us. Brenda, if you raise your hand if you'd like to say anything. I don't see your hand going up, so thank you for attending. And always grateful to have our residents here. Let's go around the room. Anything, Sandy?
Nope.
Anything additional, Mike?
I have one additional thing. John, last night you said at the meeting, some of the contractors don't bill for 3 months. Do you accrue? Then it falls falls to the prior year, or does it all fall into the new year when they bill?
So we accrue, so we do, if we do anything prepaid, that like, so Cherry Days is a good example that falls on July 1. Anything we prepay in June, we push forward as a prepaid expense, and anything that comes in as revenue after July 1, we roll backwards.
So you do prior
Yeah.
year adjustment.
Yeah, so we capture it all, so it's June 30 to, or July 1 to June 30, based on when the expense occurred or when the revenue was earned.
Katie, anything?
Yeah.
Bryce? Councilman? John,
No.
thank you all for being here.
I appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn?